My ex used to tell people I would end up alone. He said it like a fact, not an insult. He said it to friends, to coworkers, even to my family. And when he finally said it to me, he smiled and added, "You'll see. I'm just being honest." I didn't argue with him. I didn't defend myself. Years later, he walked into a wedding, looked at the groom, and realized exactly how wrong he was. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Stories like this connect people everywhere. My name is Claire Mitchell, and for a long time, I thought loving someone meant accepting the version of myself they believed in. When I met Evan, he was confident and charming. He knew how to speak to a room and make people laugh. At first, that confidence pulled me in. I thought being with someone so sure of himself would make me stronger too. Instead, I started shrinking. Evan liked being admired, and without realizing it, I let him take the lead in everything. Where we went, who we spent time with, what mattered. When I spoke up, he corrected me gently, like he was helping. When I disagreed, he laughed it off and said I worried too much. My mother adored him at first. She said he was stable, successful, and sure of what he wanted. She told me I was lucky to have someone like him. My father stayed quiet, watching more than he spoke. My younger brother Luke never liked the way Evan talked to me. Once, after Evan made a joke at my expense, Luke pulled me aside and said, "He doesn't talk to you like an equal." I brushed it off. I told myself love meant compromise. That relationships needed patience. That if I stayed understanding, things would feel balanced again. But slowly, Evan began telling people I would struggle without him. He said I was too sensitive, too cautious, too unsure to make it on my own. At first, he said it like a joke. Over time, it sounded more like a prediction. And the scariest part was not hearing him say it. The scariest part was starting to wonder if he was right. The first time Evan said it in front of other people, I felt my stomach drop. We were at a small dinner with friends, nothing formal, just a few couples talking about work and plans. Someone asked me what I wanted to do next in my career. I started answering honestly, talking about a role I was hoping to apply for and how excited I felt about the chance to grow. Evan smiled and cut in before I could finish. He said, "She has big ideas, but she gets overwhelmed easily. That's why I help her stay realistic." People laughed politely, unsure if they were supposed to. I laughed too, even though my chest felt tight. On the drive home, I told him the comment bothered me. I tried to keep my voice calm. I told him I wanted support, not jokes at my expense. He looked surprised, then annoyed. "You take everything so seriously," he said. I was just being honest. That word again, honest. It was always his shield. After that night, the comments became more frequent. He would mention how hard it was for people like me to be alone. He would say I was lucky to have someone who understood my limits. When I pushed back, he accused me of being insecure. Slowly, I stopped correcting him. It was easier to stay quiet than to argue. The real damage happened when he started saying it to my family. One afternoon, we were at my parents' house for lunch. My mother asked about our future, about marriage, about where things were heading. Evan leaned back in his chair and said, "Honestly, Claire needs stability. She wouldn't do well on her own." My mother nodded, thoughtful. "I just want her to be safe," she said. I felt small sitting there, like a child being discussed instead of an adult being respected. My brother Luke stared at Evan, his jaw tight. Later, he told me, "He talks about you like you're a project, not a partner." I defended Evan again. I said he meant well. I said he was just worried about me. But the truth was starting to press in from all sides. The breakup came suddenly, but it should not have surprised me. We were arguing about something minor, something that did not matter. I told him I wanted more say in our life. I told him I felt unheard. He went quiet, then smiled in a way that made my stomach turn. "If you leave," he said, "you'll regret it." I asked him why. "Because you'll end up alone," he said. "People like you always do." There was no anger in his voice, no cruelty, just confidence. I felt something break then, but not in a painful way. It was more like a knot finally loosening. I realized he believed what he was saying. He truly thought he was my last chance at happiness. I told him I was done. He laughed softly and said, "You'll be back. You won't find anyone else who puts up with you." I packed my things that night. I did not cry until I was alone. Even then, the tears were mixed with relief. I felt embarrassed, scared, and unsure, but I also felt free in a way I had not felt in years. After the breakup, Evan made sure everyone knew his version of the story. He told mutual friends I was too fragile for a real relationship. He said I would come crawling back once I realized how hard being alone was. Some people believed him. Others stayed silent. My mother worried out loud. She asked if I was okay living by myself. She asked if I was lonely. My father said little, but one evening he looked at me and said, "You don't sound defeated." That mattered more than he knew. Late at night, doubt crept in. I replayed Evan's words in my head. I wondered if he was right. I wondered if being alone was proof that something was wrong with me. But every morning I woke up and felt a little lighter. No criticism waiting for me. No one predicting my failure. That was when I understood the real conflict was not losing Evan. It was deciding whether I believed him. After the breakup, I made one quiet decision that changed everything. I stopped explaining myself. I did not defend my choices to people who had already made up their minds. I did not correct the stories Evan told about me. At first, that silence felt uncomfortable, like I was letting him win. But slowly, it became a kind of strength I had never known before. Living alone was strange at first. The apartment felt too quiet. There was no one commenting on what I ate, how I spent my evenings, or whether my plans made sense. I caught myself expecting criticism that never came. I would make a decision and wait for doubt to follow, only to realize it was my own voice now, not his. That realization was both scary and freeing. I poured my energy into work, not to distract myself, but because it reminded me I was capable. I took on new responsibilities. I spoke up in meetings. When someone listened to me without interrupting, it felt unfamiliar but welcome. I started trusting my instincts again. One choice at a time. My best friend Maya became my anchor. She listened without trying to fix me. One night, after I admitted I was afraid Evan might be right, she said, "Ending up alone is not the same as being unlovable." That sentence stayed with me. It shifted something in the way I saw myself. My family slowly adjusted too. My mother worried less when she saw me steady. She noticed I slept better. She noticed I laughed more. My father said he was proud of me, not for leaving, but for standing on my own. My brother Luke stopped asking if I missed Evan and started asking what I wanted next. Months passed before Daniel entered my life. When he did, there was no rush, no pressure. We met through a mutual connection at work. Our first conversation was simple. He asked thoughtful questions and actually waited for the answers. I did not feel the need to impress him. That alone felt new. Daniel did not talk much about himself at first. He listened. He remembered small details. When I shared opinions, he did not challenge them or reshape them. He respected them. I noticed I never felt tired after spending time with him. I felt calm. When he asked me out for coffee, I hesitated out of habit. Then I realized the hesitation was not fear of him, but fear of repeating the past. I said yes anyway, because I trusted myself enough to leave if something felt wrong. As we spent time together, I noticed how different love could feel. There were no tests, no predictions, no warnings about who I might become. When I spoke about my goals, Daniel asked how he could support them. He never suggested limits. He never hinted that I needed him to be complete. One evening I told him about Evan. Not in detail, just enough for context. I expected questions or judgment. Instead, Daniel said, "That sounds heavy. I'm glad you chose yourself." There was no comparison, no competition. Just understanding. That was the moment I knew I had changed. I was no longer building my life in response to someone else's opinion. I was choosing from a place of clarity. Whether Daniel stayed in my life forever or not, I knew I would be okay. That certainty was new and powerful. Over time, love grew naturally. Not loud, not rushed, just solid. I stopped thinking about proving anything. I stopped wondering what Evan would think if he saw me now. Because for the first time, his voice no longer lived in my head. And without realizing it, I was walking toward a future he never believed I could have. The day Evan found out who I was marrying was not dramatic at first. There was no announcement, no warning, no moment where the room went silent all at once. It happened quietly, the way real life usually does, and that made it even more powerful. The wedding was for a mutual acquaintance, someone we both knew years ago. I almost did not go. Not because I was afraid of seeing Evan, but because I did not think about him at all. Daniel and I had already sent our reply. We were going to support friends, enjoy the evening, and leave early if it felt overwhelming. When we arrived, the room was warm and full of conversation. People were laughing, hugging, catching up. Daniel held my hand naturally, not tight, not protective, just present. I felt calm. I felt grounded. I noticed Evan across the room before. He noticed me. He was standing with a group of people, confident as always, telling a story. His posture had not changed. His laugh was the same. For a moment, I felt a familiar flutter in my chest, but it passed quickly. I reminded myself that this version of him no longer defined me. Then he turned and saw us. At first, he did not recognize. I saw the confusion cross his face as his eyes landed on Daniel. He studied him, clearly trying to understand why this man mattered to me. When his eyes finally met mine, his expression shifted. Surprise came first. Then disbelief. He walked toward us slowly, like someone unsure of the ground beneath their feet. "Claire," he said, "I didn't know you were coming." "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. His eyes dropped to Daniel's hand holding mine. "I didn't know you were seeing someone." Daniel smiled politely and introduced himself. He was calm, steady, everything Evan never expected. They shook hands. Evan's grip was tense. Daniel's was relaxed. "So," Evan said, forcing a smile, "how do you two know each other?" I answered simply, "We're getting married." The words landed between us and stayed there. Evan blinked like he had misheard me. "Married?" he repeated. "Yes," I said. For a moment he said nothing. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He looked at Daniel more carefully now, not with curiosity, but with evaluation. I could see him searching for something. A flaw. A reason. Anything that would make sense of what he was seeing. Daniel spoke easily about his work when Evan asked. He did not brag. He did not oversell himself. The more he spoke, the more Evan's confidence faded. This was not a man I had settled for. This was not a rebound. This was a partner. Evan finally looked back at me. "I didn't think you'd move on so quickly," he said. I smiled, not to be sharp, but to be honest. "It wasn't quick." I said, "It was healthy." That was when his expression changed completely. He stepped back slightly, his voice softer now. "You look different," he said. "I feel different," I replied. The truth of that moment settled in for both of us. He saw it then. The calm, the certainty, the absence of doubt. I was not trying to prove anything. I was simply living. We said our goodbyes politely. No argument, no confrontation. Just a quiet ending. As Daniel and I walked away, I felt something lift from my chest. Not anger. Not pride, relief. The kind that comes when a story finally closes. Later that night, Daniel asked me if seeing Evan had been hard. I thought about it for a moment and then said no. Because the person Evan once convinced me I was no longer existed. And the woman standing beside my future husband needed no validation from her past. After the wedding, life settled back into its quiet rhythm. There was no dramatic fallout, no sudden shift in the world around me, and that was the most telling part. The moment I once imagined as the final proof did not need an audience. It only needed to happen. I went home with Daniel, and the next morning felt exactly the same as the one before it. Calm, secure, real. A few days later, Evan sent me a message. It was short and carefully written, the kind of message that tries to sound casual while carrying regret underneath. He said it was good to see me. He said he hoped I was happy. He asked how long Daniel and I had been together. Reading it, I felt no rush to respond. No need to explain. No urge to reopen a door that had already closed. So I didn't reply. That choice surprised me more than anything else. In the past, I would have felt responsible for his feelings. I would have tried to soften the moment, to reassure him, to prove there was no anger left. This time, I understood something new. Silence is not cruel when it is honest. It is simply complete. My family noticed the change in me more clearly after the wedding. My mother admitted she had worried I would struggle alone. She told me she was glad she had been wrong. My father smiled in his quiet way and said, "You chose well." My brother Luke laughed and said, "I knew he wasn't the end of your story." Their words did not heal me. I had already done that work. But they did confirm it. What stayed with me most was how little space Evan took up in my thoughts after everything. For so long, his voice had followed me, predicting my failure, questioning my strength. I thought proving him wrong would feel like victory. Instead, forgetting him entirely felt like freedom. I learned that people who say you will end up alone are often afraid of what you will become without them. They call independence loneliness because it scares them. They confuse control with love and certainty with truth. When you leave, they expect you to fall because your success would mean their story was wrong, but life does not argue. It does not announce. It simply unfolds. I did not end up alone, and even if I had, that would not have been a failure. Being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to someone. Losing yourself is. Daniel never tried to rescue me from my past. He never needed to. He met me as I was and walked beside me without leading or following. That kind of partnership is quiet, but it is powerful. It leaves no room for doubt. Looking back now, I am grateful for the moment Evan underestimated me. Not because it hurt, but because it forced me to see how much strength I had been giving away. His prediction became the reason I learned to trust myself. He once told everyone I would end up alone. I never corrected him. I let time, growth, and the life I built speak instead. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach others who need to hear them.